You're standing before a sealed steel door. Behind a thick pane of glass lies a pale, sterile room, cold like an operating theater. Inside, a man is sitting, but from the very first moment, you know, he's not human. That face appears in no civil database. A heavy, square jaw, brows sloping like cliffs, thick, leathery skin, unnaturally massive muscles. He turns toward you, and those eyes, locking on where you stand, seem to peer through the entire memory of humankind. There is no sound, only a truth, slowly rising from the bloodstream of history. He's a Neanderthal, and he's just been born in the 21st century. Not in a movie, not in a novel, but inside a laboratory at one of the world's leading genetic research centers, where humanity is doing something no one has dared attempt in over 40,000 years, bringing back an extinct species of human. The Neanderthals once ruled Europe. They were stronger than us. Their brains were larger. They survived ice ages, hunted mammoths, and once stood shoulder to shoulder with our ancestors. Until one day, they disappeared. But that disappearance isn't just fossilized in stone. A part of them still lives, hidden deep in our blood. Today, with synthetic genomes, embryo editing, and bioprinters, we are facing a question no civilization has ever asked before. If you could bring a Neanderthal back to life, would you? And if you did, what would happen when they truly returned? More than 400,000 years ago, while the ancestors of modern humans were still fumbling with rocks and hiding in caves, another kind of human quietly rose from the frozen forests of Europe. The Neanderthals. They were not our ancestors, but evolutionary siblings, emerging from a separate branch of the Homo lineage. And if you're picturing some clumsy, dim-witted creature like in old cartoons, it's time to let go of that myth. Neanderthals were the true warriors of the Ice Age. They lived in a world with no electricity, no medicine, no clothing. Only bitter winds, deadly predators, and a constant shadow of death. And yet, they didn't just survive. They thrived. They crafted tools from flint, hunted mammoths, and woolly rhinos with nothing but strength and strategy. Their forearm bones were as dense as Olympic athletes, but without any training. They were born that way. They buried their dead, wore bird feathers as jewelry, painted their bodies with minerals. They lived in tight-knit groups, hunted together, shared food, and perhaps they spoke. No one has ever heard Neanderthal's voice, but their vocal tract and a gene called FOXP2 linked to speech suggests they may have spoken. They may have told stories. They may have sung lullabies to their children. Then around 40,000 years ago, they vanished. No farewell, no tombs, no epic legends, only fossilized bones scattered across Europe and Central Asia. And a question no one has definitively answered. Why did a species so strong, so intelligent, so perfectly adapted go extinct? For centuries, archaeologists could only guess. Climate change? Competition for resources? War? Until a new science emerged and changed everything. Ancient genetics. In 1997, inside a modest lab in Germany, a Swedish scientist bent over fragments of ancient bone, worn, decayed, thousands of years old. His name was Svante Pääbo, and he wasn't just doing science. He was chasing a dream that seemed insane. Let's reconstruct the genome of an extinct human species. Most of his peers laughed. Ancient DNA is fragmented, damaged, mixed with bacteria. It's like trying to reassemble a shredded book that's been buried in mud for millennia. But Pääbo didn't give up. He developed techniques to filter DNA, separate bacteria, and reconstruct each broken gene. He traveled from the Denisova cave in Siberia to El Sidron in Spain, hunting for bones that still held the raw genetic code of a forgotten people. And then, in 2010, the impossible happened. Svante Pääbo and his team unveiled the first complete Neanderthal genome. When they compared it to modern humans, they discovered something shocking. Everyone without African ancestry carries 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA. That means our ancestors interbred with them. Not once, but again and again. A part of the Neanderthals still lives. In our skin, in our immune systems, in the instincts we thought were purely our own. They didn't vanish. They were absorbed. And then, quietly but insistently, a new question began to echo. In conference rooms, in laboratories, and in the minds of frontier scientists. If we now have the complete blueprint, why not try bringing them back? Technically, science is ready. We're no longer in the realm of fiction. We've already done it. With mice, with goats, even pigs engineered with human organs. And in Siberia, a woolly mammoth embryo waits for its chance to be born from an Asian elephant. The process is clear. Retrieve an egg, remove the nucleus, insert reconstructed DNA, implant into a womb, wait for a prehistoric being to be born. With the Neanderthal, only one thing is different. We need a mother, and this might be the most terrifying scenario in the history of biology. In 2013, George Church, a geneticist at Harvard renowned for his pioneering gene editing work, uttered a single sentence that shocked the world. I could revive a Neanderthal if I had a willing woman to carry it. That's all it took. One sentence, and the world exploded. Headlines screamed. Ethics boards reacted. Human rights organizations held emergency meetings. A wave of controversy swept through every laboratory on Earth. For the first time in history, a top scientist publicly declared, "We can create a human being from death, but who will carry an extinct species in their womb? Not because there are no options, but because every option is a nightmare." A willing volunteer? Who could endure 9 months carrying a being that has never existed in the modern world? How could she not fear the child growing inside her? An artificial womb? The technology is advancing. But would a life grown in a glass tank be considered truly human? A surrogate for hire? A dark scenario where life becomes a commercial product, ordered like merchandise. And if the child is born different, disabled, or simply not what we expected, who takes responsibility? No one knows how a real Neanderthal would behave in today's world. They might learn to speak. They might feel emotions. They might be intelligent or not. But one thing is certain, they will be different. And human history has never been kind to those who are different. Would they be allowed to attend school, receive citizenship, or be locked in a research center for life? If they can love, dream, and feel pain, are we still human if we create such a being only to treat it like a specimen? Jurassic Park warned us, don't bring back what you can't control. But dinosaurs can't speak. A Neanderthal, on the other hand, might look you in the eye and ask, why did you bring me back just to treat me like a monster? Reviving an extinct species, or creating a tragedy the world has never known. We already have the technology, the equipment, the data, the genes, the methods. The only question that remains is, are we ready to bear the consequences of the life we create? When an ancient human opens their eyes for the first time in 40,000 years, what they see may not be light, but glass. Imagine, a boy is born in a secret laboratory. His eyes open, reflecting fluorescent light. His body is powerful. His face, unfamiliar, unlike anyone else. Doctors measure his skull, his chest, draw his blood, analyze his bones, and then they assign him a name, one that belongs to no nation. Because he has no citizenship, no race, no kind. He is the first, and perhaps the last, a species resurrected, only to live in solitude. Will he live? No country recognizes a Neanderthal as a citizen. No school has a curriculum for prehistoric children. No immigration policy. No voting rights. No medical board. And most importantly, no one to call a fellow kind. The first Neanderthal, if born, will belong to no community. The modern world has never prepared for the return of a human species it once erased. They might speak. They might learn. But will they be heard? There was a time when science declared Neanderthals as brutish, dumb, incapable of speech. But that view has collapsed. They have the FOXP2 gene linked to language. They had larger brains than Homo sapiens, especially in areas linked to emotion and intuition. They buried their dead, painted symbols on stone, crafted specialized tools. So yes, they could speak, and perhaps they could think deeper than we imagine. What if they learn modern language? What if they begin to read books, understand laws, and challenge logic? Would they have the right to speak back? Or would they be locked up, labeled as dangerous? Or worse, not human? Let's be honest. If you were the first government to possess a Neanderthal, would you let him live freely? Or would you lock him in a research facility, attach lifetime tracking devices, extract his DNA weekly, film his reactions to modern technology, sign a reality TV deal, sell his face to an AI company? Science is a perfect cover for control. And to many, a Neanderthal is not a person. He is the most valuable research asset of the 21st century. If you think this is far-fetched, look to history. In 1916, Oda Benga, a black man from the Congo, was put on display at the Bronx Zoo in New York. He was caged with monkeys. Crowds laughed, threw food, took photos. A few months later, Oda took his own life. And today, if a modern Neanderthal were born, can we truly say we're more civilized than our ancestors? A genetic crime is forming. If a being with Neanderthal DNA is brought to life, will they be treated as human? If abused, who protects them? If exploited, which law punishes that? If they fall in love with a modern human, will it be forbidden? If they want children, will their child be recognized? Genetic crimes aren't just about flawed editing. They're about creating life and abandoning responsibility. And what if the Neanderthal is smarter than us? A scenario no scientist dares write down. What if they're not inferior, but superior? What if a Neanderthal has perfect memory, deep emotion, and thinking beyond the limits of Homo sapiens? Would they be seen as a threat? They might learn faster, reason in ways our ancestors forgot, create things we can't yet imagine. They might seek power, not with weapons, but with evolution. And if that happens, humanity will face a new species, one that may be better than us. And if so, who truly deserves to be preserved? Science can recreate DNA, but it cannot recreate empathy. It cannot restore lost communities. It cannot program memories, feelings, culture, and it certainly cannot stamp resurrected on an ancient soul. When the world today was never prepared to accept their existence. Perhaps we're not doing this for science, but for ego, for that intoxicating belief. Because we must. But when humans play God, we forget something vital. Even God had limits. If you were the first Neanderthal, would you choose to live or to die under the sterile white light of the lab, with every camera recording, while millions await the grand story of evolution? The Neanderthal opens his eyes. He doesn't speak, doesn't cry, doesn't scream. He just looks straight at you, not with gratitude, but with a stare as deep as a chasm, carrying 40,000 years of abandonment. And then he speaks, for the first time, in a language of this new world. Who am I in your world? We are not resurrecting the past. We are confronting ourselves. The Neanderthals never truly disappeared. They are still here, in our spines, in our blood, in the primal reflexes even we don't fully understand. They live quietly within the genes that pulse through billions of human bodies. Every time your immune system reacts, every time your skin shivers from the cold, every time you flinch at a sound deep in the forest. It's not just instinct. It is the genetic echo of a species erased from history. Science is ready. We have the genome. We have CRISPR. We have artificial embryos, exosomes, and machines more complex than a newborn's brain. We now have everything needed to create a Neanderthal. What we don't have is moral readiness. We are not prepared to welcome back a species our ancestors once destroyed. We are not ready to call something other our kin. We are not ready to look into history and admit, maybe we are the product of conquest, not evolution. History is never silent. It merely sleeps, waiting for the right moment to return. We think we've buried the past, but history is not dead. It lives in our DNA. It lies in the collective memory of a people who no longer have voices to speak. A people with no writing, no epic poems, no monuments, only bones. And now, through science, they may finally have the chance to tell their story again. The story of those who once loved, once dreamed, once fought to live, and were forgotten beneath the dust of what we call success. The final question. One day, you walk into a science exhibit, and a man stands before you. No lab coat. No stone tools. Just silence. Broad cheekbones. Lowbrow. Eyes deep like a fairy tale never told. He looks at you. No threat. No plea. No blame. He simply says, I am your ancestor. I have returned. What will you say back? If you're still thinking, if your heart faltered for just a moment at the thought of those eyes, if you believe there are stories that should never be buried beneath the ice of time, subscribe now. We don't just tell stories of the past. We awaken the memories history tried to hide.